Welcome to Science Talk. Science broadcasting in Akashvani is a foundational pillar of India's public broadcasting mandate designed to popularize science, foster a scientific temper, and translate complex research into accessible regional languages. It bridges the gap between premier scientific institutions and the common citizen. Akashvani's commitment to science communication began soon after independence, gaining massive momentum with science cells established in major stations during 1976. To know more, listen to this interview with Jayalal, an Indian Broadcasting Service officer, served as the Deputy Director General and briefly held the additional charge of Director General of All India Radio in 2008 on the topic Science Broadcasting in Akashvani, Journey, Impact and Future. Jayalal, welcome in Akashvani studio. You have been closely associated with science broadcasting for many years. How did your journey with Akashvani begin?
Let me tell you that I have been with science broadcasting since 1977 as part of the first batch of 7 science cells and science officers. Science cells were a novel and unique initiative introduced by Akashvani in 1976. These science cells were formed as a policy decision of the Government of India to inculcate scientific temper in society, to educate listeners against superstitions, and to popularize the achievements of the scientific community. In the first instance, as I mentioned just now, 7 science cells were set up, one each in Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Ahmedabad, Hyderabad, Chennai and Trivandrum. Each science cell was a self-contained unit of 3 officials, a science officer, an assistant editor science reporting and a production assistant. I was the last among the first batch of science officers to join. That gives me pride in dedicating this small talk between us to all other science officers who were senior to me and also those juniors who subsequently were appointed as science officers in Jaipur, Bhopal and Cuttack as part of an expansion of science cells. Lucknow also had a science cell but no science officer was appointed there. Now coming to your key question. I was a research fellow in a project funded by CSIR when the notification for appointment of science officer in Akashvani Trivandrum was published. My qualifications met the eligibility criteria for the post and I applied for it. I always had a fascination for science, let it be any branch. That gave an added impetus for my decision to try my luck with Akashvani. After getting selected, I was offered a contract on monthly basis which went on for 2 years and then up to 58 years of age.
Jayalal, what inspired you to work in the field of science communication and broadcasting?
I had a fascination for science. I believed science is material truth and Akashvani, being an organization of national importance and wide reach, is an apt place to explore the full potential of popular science.
Akashvani created dedicated science cells in major stations. How significant was this initiative for science communication in India?
I would say that this decision of the government changed the science communication scenario in the audio medium. Till then, it was print media that dominated the scene with major newspapers and popular science journals and periodicals taking the lead role. It had a disadvantage. It was a little expensive affair as these publications had to be purchased. Another disadvantage was that it avoided to a greater extent the illiterate who could neither read nor write and also those with impaired vision. In my opinion, I would say the decision of the Government of India to set up science cells was a progressive decision which augmented the public service content of Akashvani.
From being a performer, presenter and producer to becoming an administrator, how do you look back at your professional journey?
I enjoyed my job at every point of time at each level. Had pride of working in a very prestigious organization which was an integral part of the people in every corner of the Republic. From a contractual employee on monthly contract to 2-year contract to contract up to 58 years to a redesignated assistant station director to a UPSC recruited station director to a ADG to a redesignated ADG to DG in charge to Senior General Manager Prasar Bharati, I have enjoyed each role and I strongly believe I have given my best to the organization. There is nothing more satisfying than that.
Which phase of your career gave you the greatest satisfaction? Creative broadcasting or administrative leadership?
Creative broadcasting is like sculpting. Administrative leadership is managing that sculpture and its abode in its pristinity, appeal and grandeur. Programmer is a creative artist. Administrator in Akashvani is an artist cum manager who has to take his team along with him.
In the late 1980s, 90s, science programs on radio became very popular. What made them so impactful?
Basically, the content and not so conservative approach in programming. There was wide variety in programs. Programs were tailored and presented in such a way as to suit the tastes of different age groups and intellectual levels.
Before the internet era, radio was one of the most trusted sources of information. How did Akashvani contribute to spreading scientific awareness among the masses?
Radio was one of the most trusted sources of information. The credit goes to those who took the pains to gather and disseminate that information. If one has to disseminate information, he must have sufficient knowledge of what he has to do. Even at a time when there was no internet, you may perhaps remember that we have been doing radio bridge programs linking many stations of Akashvani, which was quite innovative at that time.
How important is science broadcasting in developing scientific temper and ranking and rational thinking in society?
Like every other field of knowledge, science is also evolving. The developments in science must be known to the masses. Everyone is not a great scientist, nor has the ability to interpret highly technical terms and theories. The principles of science have to be explained in simple terms as could be assimilated by the lay listener. That will help them to correlate with their otherwise gained knowledge and will improve their capacity for reasoning. Scientific temper improves with reasoning and vice versa.
Do you think science programs help in reducing superstitions and misinformation?
The content and presentation was also important as in any other radio program. Superstitions used to be explained in simple styles in various programs in a manner that never offended the sentiments, beliefs, customs or practices of the listener. We were born and brought up in a society with a lot of superstitions and misinformation. No one can transform this overnight, but seeds of prudence can be planted lavishly. That's what science cells have done.
Could you share any examples?
Let me specify here that the period of my tenure as a science officer was for about 13 years, from 1976 to 1989, when I was redesignated as Assistant Station Director and moved greatly to administration. During late 70s, I started a question and answer program for the public where they could ask doubts on various science topics. These questions were answered by experts in relevant disciplines. There was manageable inflow of questions and the frequency of the program had to be increased. I had a daily 20-minute slot for science programs apart from the Science Cell contributions to other special audience sections. Science Cell launched radio science clubs which also picked up in no time. We had over 700 science clubs in the 80s with a dedicated time slot for them to present their programs. The efforts taken by the members of the radio science clubs in planning their content for radio were amazing. They got the best of resource persons available in their area and in many cases even from distant places. They too would send letters regularly and if in 1 week any name was left out, they will come to Akashvani the next day. It was with the help of these radio clubs that we arranged radio rural forums where an expert resource person would be taken to a remote village to interact with the villagers assembled there. The recordings then would be edited and broadcast, which in turn resulted in many villages asking for a gathering in theirs. The Malayalam version of the mega serial Method of Science, which ran into more than 100 episodes, was an unimaginable and unprecedented success. That was a program produced on a national level with expert guidance from the NCSTC of Department of Space and Technology, Government of India. Science Cell of Akashvani Trivandrum also conducted a 5-day national science seminar with a 7-day science exhibition. I was always impressed by the attitude of many eminent persons where they have taken lot of pains to give us a broadcast-worthy material. Eminent scientists in ISRO and VSSC, Center for Earth Science Studies, Tropical Botanical Gardens and Research Institute, all to mention a few, found time to support Akashvani. Many of them had even acknowledged their responses they got from the listeners. I also remember my rewriting scripts for two scientists regularly to make them simpler. Its explanation in short sentences, simple language, style, terms, and suggesting visual examples wherever possible. They play a crucial role. The medium of education has greatly shifted to regional languages. Scientific literature is immensely available in regional languages. In this situation, it is the choicest option to have science popularization greatly in regional languages too. My experience relates to 37 years behind. I can recall a specific incident. The total solar eclipse on 16th February 1980. There was no television in Kerala at that time. We were giving a lot of information relating to how to view the eclipse safely and what all filters could be used. As I was going around the city on my scooter to see people's reaction for myself and to prepare some notes on how the animals in the zoo were responding or felt in that environment, a group standing near the observatory waved their hands at me, showing strips of film negatives, and told me it's because of Akashvani that they could view the eclipse. Epidemics and health campaigns were basically handled by health and family welfare sections. Science Cell of Akashvani Trivandrum was only contributing 2 programs a month to that section. But whenever there was a campaign on any health issue, all propaganda materials that were designed for the specific campaign became part of science broadcast too. As far as environmental issues were concerned, they were an integral part of science broadcasts. We were actively participating in the Silent Valley campaign of 1970s, highlighting the disaster it would bring if a hydroelectric dam was built there, till Silent Valley was declared a national park in 1985. Akashvani has the mandate for doing these things, and I hope they are doing it to the best of their possibility in the existing circumstances.
What were the biggest challenges in presenting scientific subjects through an audio medium?
The scientific and technical jargons and lack of sufficient, apt and popular terminologies in many local languages. Now the scenario is different. Science communication in one's mother tongue is not very difficult. The other difficulty is in explaining uncommon shapes and sizes and similar visuals where listeners can be prompted to refer a print. Public service broadcasting will be relevant as long as public are there. In this digital age, there is no dearth of information. But how useful many of them are to the lay public? Do we get correct information in many cases? Are we sure of the authenticity of the source? Do many information come in a people-friendly style or format? Who verifies all those dumped on the digital platforms? And what about the subscription being charged by many of those platforms? So, in my humble opinion, Akashvani should be the flag bearer of public service broadcasting, counter misinformation through authentic information, and try to get wider reach through listener-friendly approaches in programming. Let me try to explain. Apart from the physical qualities of sound, it can ignite imagination, curiosity, and to a certain extent, create an emotional connection. Audio broadcast encourages listeners to think, imagine, and visualize. So, listening to an audio program is a mental exercise. Science broadcasts can create curiosity and wonder through properly chosen program formats. Fascinating topics attract listeners. The reach of audio broadcasts are much wider than other formats. Role models and achievers can act as guiding forces. Latest areas of disciplines in science and technology will pave the way for more opportunities for students to choose their career path. It is important not to forget our traditional knowledge. It can be a basis, but one should not get stuck with it. I believe one cannot start building everything from scratch every time. Let improvements take place from the already improved ones of the time. Let me be frank and open. I could not bring any radical changes in science programming as an administrator. It is a known fact that the setup of Akashvani at the time of my entering into service had changed completely by September 15, 1997. Policies, principles, and philosophies changed. Commercial aspirations started eroding aesthetic realities. As a person who has seen the most glorious days of Akashvani, it is saddening to see the degeneration. By having committed science program producers and supporting them with proper funding and technical facilities, Ability and willingness to learn and experiment with the creative and innovative ideas and be current with the developments in the field of science, ability to judge and gauge the depth of listeners' reactions, a conviction that program production is not an office job sitting in AC environment, compare her productions with the world's known broadcasting organizations, and a belief that and vision that programs are for people to listen, feel, comment, appreciate, and criticize. Platforms are just means of communication to reach a wider audience. It is always beneficial for media. More exposure means more beneficiaries. But what is important is the correctness, authenticity, and timely dissemination of information. In an ever-expanding and constantly changing media landscape, opportunities for a genuine science communicator are many. But my question will be, how much time or space the promoters will give? When profit and money are the considerations, and monetization the end game for the private players in the field, Akashvani has to stand out from all these. The first and foremost contribution, I would say, was setting up 11 science cells with the policy of having organized science broadcast. The next would be the syllabi-based support for school students, where some stations even conducted these lessons for mathematics. Another one would be the augmentation of library facilities for scientific books and other scientific literature. The fourth could be the facilities provided to science officers by the way of an annual workshop for science officers at different places in India, so that various institutes of higher scientific research and learning interact with the reputed scientists and study the various activities in each of them. The fifth, but not the last, would be the Akashvani's collaboration with NCSTC for financial support and expert guidance in several coordinated programs on national level. Akashvani is the largest radio network in the world in terms of reach and population. It broadcasts in 23 major languages and 181 dialects through its 755 transmitters and 591 Akashvani broadcasting installations, enabling radio signals to practically reach the whole of the country. Nowadays, Akashvani is also available on DD Free Dish, a DTH platform, News on Air mobile app, and Waves OTT platform. Then the broadcasts are authentic and free for listeners. For many resource persons, participating in a radio program is still a sign of prestige and pride. Getting into the midst of the various sections of the listening public, planning, coordinating, and producing programs that was tailor-made for each group, it's a difficult question in the present scenario. I worked when Akashvani was almost a monopoly broadcaster. There were specific policies and conventions for each section. It was not an autonomous body. It was a Government of India department. We never faced dearth of funds for content or manpower. There was no competition from similar media. Programmers were recruited based on their talent. Based on my experience at higher levels till my retirement, I have doubts whether this is the situation now. I would advise each of the aspiring science broadcasters to be duty-bound, knowledge crazy, invent something beyond copying old practices, learn what are happening in other similar organizations of repute, copy good ones, modify those that need to be modified, and above all, a conviction that broadcast is for the people. Science is conquering new realms. It will continue to as long as the world is there. The world will be there as long as the universe is there, and the universe is ever expanding. So, science broadcast can only increase in pace, quality of content, and variety, provided there is a will for those who are at the helm of affairs.
Science broadcasting in Akashvani, Journey, Impact, and Future. You were listening to an interview with G. Jayalal, an Indian Broadcasting Service Officer, served as the Deputy Director General and briefly held the additional charge of Director General of All India Radio in 2008.
This broadcast came to you from the Indraprastha channel of Akashvani, Delhi.